Hi, welcome back to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. I'm Doug O'Brien, and I'll be joined today by my good friend Damon Cart. Damon Cart is not to be confused with the world-renowned Damon Cart. He is he's a player. He's the guy who Steve Andreas made the distinction. He said once that, when Steve was talking with other people and he'd say, you should do this, you should try this, they would talk about it, think about it, stuff. Damon, he said, would just do it. He would just do it. He would get the job done and take it to the nth degree as far as he can, and then come back to Steve later and say, oh, this is what I've been doing. What can I do more? And he just did that. He's the kind of guy that Steve Andreas made the only person that he's personally certified to teach his self-concept model. He has taken the ball of this self-concept, transforming yourself thing that Steve and Andreas did. Steve considered it his finest work. And Damon has been given the blessing by Steve to take that ball and run with it, and that is what he has done. It's incredibly exciting to see what he's doing to develop this in the world, and we want to hear all about it. He's been on this podcast before, so you might consider this part 2. We're going to find out even more about the self-concept model with Damon Cart right after this. You are listening to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast, a show devoted to uncovering the systems and the secrets that set the best apart, where you learn how to take your coaching clients to the next level, while you grow the coaching practice of your dreams. So sit back and relax, or sit up and get excited. Either way, you might want to pay attention. This could be important. Damon!
Hey, thank you for the amazing introduction. I think that's probably my favorite introduction I've ever gotten on a podcast.
Oh, well, then I guess we're done here.
Everyone knows everything they need to know about me. We might as well just put a stop to it now.
But one thing, I don't know if I said explicitly, but there's a little trophy thing behind you there. You have...
Oh, you mean this? Yeah, I got this in Beijing.
No, not that. No, not that. I'm going to zoom in on you, mister. Hold on. Just wait a minute right till I make your picture big. Is that how I do it? I don't know. Here, this will do it. Okay. So that thing with a YouTube-y kind of thing there. Yeah. What's that, Damon?
I don't know. I got it in the mail.
You did not. Come on. What? Come on.
That is a silver play button, a YouTube silver play button. It's what you get when you cross 100,000 subscribers. You get a gold one when you get to 1 million. And I think there's a platinum one that, I'm not even thinking about that right now. But yes, I crossed the 100,000 subscriber milestone.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Yes, I have, by comparison, I think 3,400 subscribers. But hey, ladies and gentlemen, you can subscribe today. You can change that. Hit the subscribe button to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. Seriously, do it. But Damon, congratulations on that, and well deserved. The output you've been doing is just extraordinary. Great production values on your videos, and just great material that you're putting out there in the world. So,
thank you.
Well done. Let's talk about self-concept.
Let's talk about it. It's all I talk about.
It's all you talk about. So you still want to talk about? We could talk about the weather. It's great weather here today. Oh my God.
How about politics, especially geopolitics?
Oh, that's a great idea. Let's delve into politics.
Yeah,
everyone loves that topic. Or not. Maybe we could stick to the same old self-concept stuff. The thing about self-concept is that everybody has one, right? And more or less people possess self-esteem. There's always talk about how we can create more self-esteem, ego-building processes, etc. And they are kind of intertwined, aren't they? In self-concept and self-esteem, that one has to have a clear self-concept and also kind of measure up to the self-concept in order to have high self-esteem. And I think that's a really fascinating, however minor part of what it is that you do. So could we just start there and talk about those two things?
Sure. And one thing I would like to add to that, because some people might be hearing, well, self-concept, like they're not really connecting with that. Let's put it maybe a way that people might understand it better.
Okay.
Beliefs, right? We have beliefs, and some of our beliefs are very limited, and some of them are very empowering. Well, the way that I see self-concept, and again, this is from Steve Andreas' his teaching is a concept is pretty much essentially a belief. Now, some people might make some distinctions or whatever, but the way that we mean it, it is essentially a belief. It's not real. It's not a fact. It's not a concrete object, right? Or a solid object. It is a concept. So there's not a concrete reality to it. It is something that we have to believe in for it to be real. It's something we have to conceptualize. So we don't really make a distinction between a belief and a concept. It's the same thing. So your concept of self is actually a belief of who you are, who you believe yourself to be. And that's going to be based on many beliefs about who you are. So it is, if you were to conceptualize all of the beliefs that you have about yourself, that is essentially what your self-concept is. It's the mother of all of the beliefs about yourself. And I would take it even further than that. And I would say it's the mother of all of your beliefs, because without a concept of self, you have no beliefs about the world. You have no beliefs about other people. So what is, the way I describe it is, your self-concept is the tree trunk and the roots of who you are. And the branches of the tree would be all of your beliefs about everything else. So all of your beliefs about everything else are going to be informed by your beliefs about yourself. So the reason why this is so important is when you change a belief about yourself, it has this cascading effect over all of your beliefs. And it tends to affect many beliefs at one time. So when we're doing change work, instead of just changing one belief you might have about, your money situation or your career, what if we change a belief about who you are that supports the kind of beliefs you want to have about your career, about money, whatever else is important to you? That's going to be a more wide-ranging, more powerful belief that goes across all contexts of your life, because one thing that we know for certain shows up in all the contexts of your life, and that is you.
That's really interesting. And, it just seems, oh God, Damon. Because you know, Damon, that I have been a student of Robert Diltz for many years. I learned NLP first from Tony Robbins, but then a lot of other people as well. Tony, when I did the NLP certification course from Tony Robbins in 1986, he also brought Robert Diltz and Richard Bandler and other people to the certification course. So I took courses from them too. I took courses from Bandler and Diltz and Dobson and Tad James and Whitewood Small and a bunch of other people. Anybody who would teach it, the Andreases. And Diltz came up with this logical levels thing, the top of which, the pyramid of logical levels, neurological levels, is identity, who you are. That's your top belief. That seems absolutely congruent with what you've just been saying.
No.
And yet, you say, no, it's not. You say no. But regardless of that, it also seems like, and we don't have to talk about that. I know we
can if you want to. I'm okay with it.
We can if we want to, but that's you've already done that. You've done a whole video, right, on debunking the logical level. Yeah. So yeah, we maybe our fourth podcast we can talk about. But in self-concept, when I was reading, I haven't finished the book, but in the reading that I have been doing, I remember this section where Steve is really into the scope and things about stuff. And he was talking about doing a particular exercise. And he asked for people not to be the highest understanding of yourself, but a kind of intermediate understanding of yourself. So yourself has levels unto itself, that maybe it's a pyramid. Maybe there's another neurological level pyramid within the identity of,
does everybody like pyramids? I would have
I don't know. Maslow. Blame him.
Yeah, blame Maslow. Did you know that Maslow?
I did. Yes, you talked about that in the previous podcast. Yes. Yes. Steve Andreas was mentored by Abraham Maslow.
Which I think he would deny this. I'm sure if Steve were alive today and I tried to call him out on this, he would deny it. And that is, it forever shaped his focus of what he was trying to find. And I think it was more out of his disappointment in Maslow that directed him this way. And I honestly, Steve is probably going to roll over in his grave if he hears this. I honestly think the self-concept model might not have created it had it not been for Maslow, even though he disavowed everything that Maslow taught him. But I just wanted to put that out there. First time I've ever put that out there in public and of any podcast. So you're the first.
At 9:50 okay, good. I'll just make a little note of that. It gets all over TikTok. So yeah, you used to have 100,000 followers. We'll see. See what happens after this. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. And by the way, one of my other podcast guests, interesting, just doesn't matter at all. But Gunther Weil also was mentored by Abraham Maslow. In fact, Maslow got him his first teaching job, which is pretty cool. So
Yep.
Maslow's been around, had some influence at least. I mean, obviously, a lot of influence. So that idea of the highest part of who you are, and that there's other beliefs, other things about who you are. Like I could say, I'm an athlete, I'm a runner, I'm a piano player, but that's not who I am. Who I am is like I'm a
Those are
child.
roles you play. Those are roles you play, and at some point, they probably won't be roles that you play. We will get so old that we can't do. I won't be able to do Brazilian jiu-jitsu anymore. So, am I still a Brazilian jiu-jitsu artist? Or my daughter's turning 18 in a few days or in a few weeks, and my son turned 17, so he's almost 18. Am I still a parent? Am I still a parent when they're 30? So the problem with investing so much in roles, and a lot of people do, a lot of people invest their identity into the roles. The problem is that the roles often go away. And so that's what happens then. We have an identity crisis. So we have to be really careful about that.
Yeah, no, that's true. I get that. And yes, it is. It's not just a role. It is who you are. That when you play the piano every day, you're a piano player. That's who you are.
Yeah.
I'm a musician. I can never not be a musician. I may not be a piano player if I lose my arm or something like that, but
let me ask you,
I'm a musician.
Doug,
Yes.
are you an artist?
Yes.
Okay. Do you identify more strongly with being an artist or a piano player?
It's interesting because I'm currently involved in playing the piano a lot. I'm doing I'm doing a concert later this month. I'm not the only one, but there are multiple people playing. I am performing at a concert later this month, so I'm over there at the piano, practicing a lot right now. So
let me ask you this:
I'm very much actively a piano player.
I've never met Bob Dylan, but I would love to ask him the question. I would say, Bob, do you identify more with being an artist or a guitar player? What do you think he would say?
I think he'd say an artist.
He's also a painter, by the way. He's paintings are pretty good. So let me ask you, what do you think would serve you better to identify as an artist or to identify as a piano player if you could only choose one?
If I could only choose one, I'd pick the artist.
Yeah, and I think that would serve you better.
In the chunk, it can include piano players.
Yeah, and then and so many other things, right?
Yeah.
So this would be one of the really important things to understand about self-concept is you could invest in the role and identifying so strongly with the role, but then some things beyond what you can control might stop you from playing the piano, and then it's done, right? But if you identify as an artist, which is at a higher logical level, then you can drop that into any context in your life. And then if ever you couldn't play piano anymore, you could still be an artist.
Yeah. And I'm just curious, and this is, again, nothing we have to pursue in depth at all, but having done core transformation quite a bit and Connie Ray's new wholeness process, it seems almost like this is like the reverse pyramid, like the core transformation is like you go deeper and deeper and deeper down to who you really are, to your core state. It's almost like, when you go higher and higher, you get to your core state. It's who am I really? I'm really the universe, or it's like who I am at the core. It's like I'm really the universe. It's kind of like the same points.
So you're so well trained in NLP and hypnosis. So I'm actually genuinely curious what your answer is to this. And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong to it. It's more a matter of preference. What would you invest more in, states or beliefs?
What do you mean by invest?
So if you could have the states that you want, or you could have the beliefs that you want, and that's not that kind of sets up a kind of solves the problem. Okay, let me just put it out there instead of trying to. So I was trained by Robert Diltz as well. He was my first NLP teacher, and the focus was a lot on states. And I've never gone to Tony Robbins anything, but almost everything I've heard him say was heavily focused on states. And that's normal because old school NLP was focused on states. Now, Robert later started focusing more on beliefs. And I think even, I remember when I first time I met you, you were doing the sleight of mouth, which is what I really wanted to learn from you because I thought you taught it better than Diltz. You were also talking about beliefs, that there was something you were working on called belief craft. I don't know if that ever became a thing, but I didn't get to study it from you. But when you think about the difference between states and beliefs, if I wanted to create or focus on one or the other, very quickly it became apparent to me that states are not very stable. And we can anchor ourselves. Like that's one way that we try to, bring a state back. But I was never good at this. I know some people are. Like I know some people, man, they hit that anchor and boom, they are there and it stays for a very long time. That never worked for me. And I had a very hard time anchoring myself because as soon as I would go, okay, it's time to anchor, hit the anchor, I'm disassociating because I'm talking to myself, right? So that brings the state down. So I found states to be very unstable. So then I started looking toward beliefs, and then I started looking at what Robert Diltz was doing around beliefs. And I don't necessarily disagree with a lot of the stuff he did around beliefs. I just didn't feel like it was the whole story. And then when I met Steve, I was like, okay, this is exactly how we create beliefs. So if we create the belief about something that will serve us very well versus the state, the belief is going to be a lot more stable because that's how we navigate the world around us. That's what informs our behavior. So even if we're not feeling it, if we believe it, we're going to act in accordance to it. Even stronger if that belief is about who you are. So you might go into a state of happiness, which is going to be very temporary, right? We have states of happiness, they come up and then they pass.
Right.
Or you can believe you are a happy person, like truly believe it based on actual examples in your life, structured in such a way that holds that belief stable, and also in such a way that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, even on your days that you're down, because I'm not perfectly happy all the time, I still know I'm a happy person, and it will lead me to the light every time. I think I've shared this in your past podcasts, or I've shared this with you. I've been depressed twice in my life. It was the second depression that I went through that drove me to finally learn NLP. I've not been depressed since, and I not only credit NLP for that, but I credit the self-concept model for that because I have transformed these beliefs in myself that have generalized into qualities of who I am. So I can temporarily be in a negative state, but that's always going to dissipate because states are not stable. They are always going to pass. And it's always going to fall back on the belief I have about myself of who I am, those core beliefs.
Cool. Love it. That's great. And that ties in with one of the questions that I had prepared for you today, that the way conversations work, we may never get to it, but I'm going to get to it right now. And that is that, of course, this is the Essential Coaching Skills podcast, and many of my listeners are coaches who have an active practice and perhaps want to be better coaches. And sometimes we have people on here that can help us to market our practices better so we can have a better coaching practice. Lots of aspects to running a successful coaching enterprise. So from a coaching perspective, if I'm not going to take all of your courses that are exquisite from what I understand, you're a superb teacher of this material from everyone that I've ever talked to who's taken your stuff. If I didn't want to do that, but I wanted to learn this for my clients. So if I have a client who comes in and is depressed, right? If I'm a coach and I have a client who comes in and is depressed and I want to help them get past their depression, let's just say I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach, but I want to still do what I can to help them get past their depression. How could I, using the self-concept model, help them do that? How is the self-concept model, how can it be applied, sort of in a clinical way?
Yeah, so this is an interesting question. And so I'm not a licensed therapist, like I mentioned to you before. So if somebody was like really clinically depressed, I would say, this is the analogy I use. If you were having a heart attack, you would not go to a personal trainer, right?
Right.
You would go to a doctor, And then when the doctor says you're healthy enough for exercise, then that's when you go to a personal trainer. So that's kind of me. I'm not a licensed therapist. If you got something really, like really wrong with you, like especially if like you're suicidal or something like that, I'm not your person. When you come out of that, even if you're not happy, but you're at least not in that low place, then yeah, I am your person. So if you came to me and you were just coming out of a depression, you're stable, and you're afraid that you're going to slip back into depression and you don't want to experience that, I would say, well, what do you want to be instead? Focus on B. So what do you want to be instead of depressed? And so if they said something simple like, well, I want to be happy, great. Then I would ask the person, are you a happy person? Now, you might be saying, well, isn't that obvious, Damon? What I'm looking for is I want to see the level that they're at. So if I say, are you a happy person? And they go, sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not. That's an ambiguous quality. I already know now what kind of setup what we'll call their database of experiences that structures their beliefs about themselves.
Let me just stop you real quick for a second. That's often, though, as you were mentioning before, state dependent. You were talking about states before. I've had people have come into my office and ask, they tell me they're depressed. And I say, okay, what are you happy about? And they'll say nothing. I'm not happy about anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I'd be depressed too if there was nothing to be happy about. But then we ask some different questions like, well, if there was something you could be happy about, what could it possibly be? And then they come up with something. And as they focus more and more on the things that they're happy about in their life, they shift their states and no longer are they depressed. So is that question that you're asking, like, are you a happy person? Is that not state dependent? Would you get a different answer in different days when you ask the person the same question?
Oh, I think it would. No. Okay. So when you say happy about, and by the way, I'm not going to say that what you're just talking about is wrong. Like, I think that's a way to get somebody to a happier place. If I say, so Doug, I just want you to feel the difference, and you can answer it how you want, or you don't have to answer, but I want you to feel the difference.
Uh-huh.
What are you happy about?
Mm-hmm.
Or how did you phrase it the first time? How are you? So if there was I wish I had time to think about the question, but more about asking if you're happy in the moment, if you're happy right. I'll just say, are you happy right now? And just think about how that question lands. Are you happy right now?
I'm totally not happy right now. I'm a depressed person. I came in here depressed. Okay. I'm still on.
Versus the question, are you a happy person?
Right. But if I was depressed, if I was actually depressed, I would say, no, I'm not.
So if I say, are you happy now? The person, and if the person's depressed, they're absolutely going to say no. If I say, are you a happy person? I might get something back like, well, when I was a kid, I was.
Right. Yeah. I was once.
Yeah, I was once. And so what that tells me is that we already have something to work with.
Okay.
It's an ambiguous quality. We have some positive examples of them being happy. So that's going to be a little bit easier. But if I say, are you a happy person? And they go, no, I've never been happy.
I've never been happy.
I've got a mountain to climb here. So that's the beginning of, like, it starts to tell me what's going on here. All right.
Okay.
So if they answer sometimes yes, sometimes no, or at sometimes in my life I was and sometimes I wasn't, we have an ambiguous quality. If I say, if I say, are you a happy person? They say, no, I'm not. I've never been happy. Okay. They have never identified with being happy, which is going to be a lot harder to work with. And I might even ask them, well, what do you, so if you're not happy, what are you? And then I might get something like not that I'm not expecting. Like they might say something like, instead of being, I'm a depressed person, they might say, I'm a failure.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we know he's identifying or she's identifying with being a failure. And this is what's keeping them from being happy.
Gotcha.
This is starting to tell me where to pinpoint where we're going to go. Okay.
Right.
So then I want to find out what is a quality about them that they do feel very certain about and that they also like about themselves.
Okay.
And there's always going to be something. And then some people might say, well, I don't feel certain about anything. And I say, okay, among the qualities that you have, some you feel more certain about and some you feel less certain about. Which one do you feel most certain about? So we can start with the most certain. And oftentimes when I say, well, I'm not certain about anything, I know what's happening right there. And I might even call it out. I'll say, are you comparing yourself to someone else? And they'll go, how did you know? Because if you compare yourself to someone else, you're always going to find somebody who's better, especially when the quality is intelligent. Like I'll get people who really feel intelligent and I'll say, are you an intelligent person? They go, yeah. Whoa, wait, no. Sometimes, and they're kind of, and I can tell what's happening. They're comparing themselves to like, Einstein or whatever. And then they're pulling it back. So, and this is just having worked with so many people over the years, just kind of knowing what's going on inside, and plus doing the work on myself. So once I know what a quality is that they feel very certain about and that they also like about themselves, the like about themselves is very important because I want a quality to model that increases their self-esteem. And in the structure of something I feel certain about and that I like about myself, whatever's happening in that structure, we want to replicate that. Something that feels very certain and something that they like about themselves.
That's great. I saw that. I remember that from the book, and I love that distinction. That it's something I believe to be true about myself, but there's different things that I believe to be. There's some that I like, and there's some that I really don't like very much.
Yeah, we don't want to model low self-esteem.
That's great. Good. Go ahead. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so from there, it's a process of eliciting that structure. And so, how do we create our beliefs? Based on experiences in our lives, right? If I'm a kid who's in elementary school and I make a good grade on a test and I bring that test home to mom, mom says, "Oh, you're smart."
Yeah.
Dad comes home and says, "Wow, you're smart." Looking at the test, mom puts it on the refrigerator. The neighbor comes over and says, "Your kid's smart." I hear this 3 times. It has something to do with me. It's called smart, and it's because I did well on this test. Then I start to generalize myself this way and I go, oh, okay, I'm this smart person. So I'm starting to categorize myself this way based on experiences that I'm having.
Yeah.
Now the opposite happens too. You do something on the playground and a kid says, well, you're stupid. You go home to mom and you say, Mom, this kid called me stupid. And mom says, well, what did you do? And you tell mom and mom goes, well, it was kind of stupid. And then you talk about it and you go get confirmation from a few more people who are authority figures in your life. And then you start to think of yourself, start to believe you are a stupid person. Now, if you took both of those kids and they were basically growing up in the same neighborhood, going to the same school and all that stuff, you can already get a sense of what very different lives these two kids will live. One believing they are very smart, one believing they are dumb. Yeah.
Right.
Profound effect, not just on who you are and how you live your life, but also on how you feel about yourself.
Sure. And by the way, just as I'm sure you are totally aware of this, but just so you know, there've also been studies done where they've had teachers who they said, hey, just so you know, your students are all exemplary kids. These are the best. We picked them for you. These are the best of the best. These are great students. So, and they were just average students, but the teacher believed that they were great. So at the end of the year, they all had much higher test scores than they'd ever gotten before, and they were some of the best in the school, et cetera. So that level of belief and expectation can, both be self-generated and also in the sort of surroundings of you sort of permeating in somehow.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing. There've been studies of, I was listening to Andrew Huberman recently, so I'm getting a lot of this like neuro stuff happening. But there have been studies with of empathy and stuff in mice, that it's just like this pheromonal quality that they link together, and so the expectations and beliefs are kind of communicated other than consciously, and that want to measure up to their beliefs. Anyway, I digress. I apologize for that. I was just very excited about what you're saying.
What you brought up brings up another thing. It was the last conversation I had with Steve. He told me what he would study if he had more time. He knew he was.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. Tell me about this. This is cool.
Yeah, he said implication. And
what do you mean?
So he got it from Milton Erickson. So it's very similar to presupposition. I hope I can explain it well enough, because it's hard to explain, but with a presupposition, if somebody lays a presupposition in front of you, you can be conscious of it and you can negate it. You can say, oh, you presuppose this and it's not true. But an implication you cannot negate. This is what makes it very, very powerful. So it's like when you open a door and then you wait for the other person, the implication is what? That the other person go through the door. But what if the person tries to negate that and says, wait, you're just trying to make me go through the door? And you go, I didn't say anything. I'm just waiting. So implications kind of like that. I wish I could. So when you were talking about the teachers, even implication even though they're not maybe saying things that are direct presuppositions toward the kids to make them smarter, they can use implication without even realizing, and most of us do. It's very unconscious, though Milton Erickson was aware of it. You can move people. It's very, very powerful and very influential. Steve did write an essay about it. You can still find it online. And it's still one of those things that I'm wrapping my brain around. And that was like the last thing he was wrapping his brain around. And he said, if I had more time, that's what I would study, because it's so powerful and it cannot be negated.
I like that. That's really good. I can remember lots of instances where Erickson would do things like that. You just say, and now you know what to do. And he goes like,
yeah. What's interesting too is implication is coming through in my work in ways that I wasn't expecting, because I didn't have these conversations about Steve. I started realizing this stuff after he had passed on. But he would say things like, one time I asked him what he was most proud of, and I kind of, I got the metaphorical crack on the head by the Kung Fu master, and he was like, I don't do pride. And I was like, what? And then he explained why. And now I'm of the same, like, I will not entertain pride. I will not engage in it. Sure, those feelings will come up from time to time, but I'm not going to engage in it. The big one is power. So one of the things I do is elicit people's values. When they tell me what it is they want, I want to know right away what is important to them about that, elicit those values, and those become the qualities that we work on later, because they transfer over to qualities very well. Power often comes up for people. And what I will tell them, I used to just slap it down and say, no, we don't want to go after power. And that's not a good way to go about it. There is a positive intention there. There is something positive there if we remove the self-important aspects of it. So that's what I'll say to them. I'll say, well, if you were to remove the self-important aspects of power, what are you left with? And usually some really beautiful values will come out of that. The reason why I tell people not to use power as a value, nor we don't want that as a quality of who we are, because power always implies power over something, as in being superior.
Right.
And people will say, well, no, I don't mean it that way. I don't want to overpower anyone. I just want to have more power over myself. And I say, okay, are you a person? Yes. Well, you're trying to overpower yourself, which creates the conflict. Why don't you just integrate yourself? Then there's no overpowering. And well, I don't mean it that way. I mean it like I want to be able to do something that I can't do. And so I'll say, well, you want capability. You want to be capable. You don't need power to be capable. So power has some very negative implications. And even if people say consciously, I don't mean it that way, you're unconscious. You will not escape the unconscious implications of these words. They will come through, even if you don't want them to. So we have to be careful. I mean, with words, we need to be careful with words because of their unconscious implications.
That's so interesting. Thank you. So let's talk more about that, because that's also eliciting the values about a quality. So that's a lot of work, I think. if you have the highest part of who you really are, the highest part of your identity, then there's other sub identities of I'm also this, I'm also this, and this, and this, and this, and then for the self-concept to be there, self-concept has certain implications. This is, I am a good person. I'm an honest person. I am a nice person. I'm, these forthright, whatever these qualities might be. So then what are the values that make up those qualities? Is that right?
Yeah. So let's go through the logical levels of the structure. And this is not neurological levels. Like
it's okay. I know they're great, and you can admit it too.
No. It actually helped me create a plateau in my growth, was trying to fit my life through those neurological levels. They're not logical. Okay. So, and I'm not the only one who's saying that. Steve said it.
I know. Many people
said it. Okay. Anyway, a true logical levels model, self-concept, is a true logical levels model based on the logical levels created by the theory created by Gregory Bateson, who had a heavy influence on NLP. So we start at the level of experience, right? We have experiences. And experiences, despite what, as you might think that they're objective, they're not, because all you've been experiencing your entire life is one continuous consciousness. And in order to consciously make sense of it, you've had to chop it up into what we call experiences. You've had to mark in and mark out a beginning and an ending, but we've never experienced a true beginning nor a true ending. When you were born, your mind wasn't capable of creating an experience out of it. So you do not have an experience of your beginning. And because you're listening to me right now, you're not dead. So you have not experienced an ending. So experiences are subjective. So we start there. When we select and collect experiences in order to make sense of our reality, we generalize. And so we generalize what these experiences mean. And if these experiences are attached to this thing called me and I, and we select and collect experiences based on me, just like I mentioned with the test. It starts to either generalize through experience. They start to select and collect these experiences of, hey, I'm smart. I'm this smart and intelligent thing. I'm not even clear what that is yet, but I'm selecting and collecting these experiences until I generalize myself as being smart. And of course, we can do the opposite. So we go from experience, selecting and collecting experiences until they turn into a category or a generalization or a belief. I'm using all of those synonymously.
Okay.
So we generalize those experiences into a generalization of an aspect of who I am. And that's what we call a quality.
Interesting.
Now,
okay.
For the sake of self-concept model, quality has a positive connotation, but we don't use it that way. A quality can be positive or negative. It's a generalization about an aspect of who you are.
Okay.
All right, so that's the second level. So we're going up the logical levels, right? What do we know about when we go up the logical levels? We're getting broader and broader categories that overlook the distinctions below. So we're looking at less and less about the actual distinctions in the experiences, but we're categorizing them higher and higher. So when I have a generalization, when I have all these generalizations about who I am, I'm happy, I'm smart, I'm optimistic. All of these things are true, by the way. And it also has to do with any negative ways of categorizing myself, any of the negative generalizations I make about myself. When all of these generalizations come together as one big generalization at a higher logical level, that's self-concept. That's our identity. It's also the reason why we cannot change ourselves directly. As much as we've tried, I know you have, and I know everyone listening has tried, to said, okay, tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., I'm going to change. I'm going to be a different person. And maybe you can keep that up for about a few days. But then, of course, by the end of the week, you're tired and you go, okay, you just resort back to however you know yourself to be. So we cannot change directly, right? We have to go to the level of qualities, the generalizations, the individual generalizations I make about myself. That's where we do the change work. And every time you change an aspect of who you are, it will have an effect on your self-concept, your identity. It goes up the logical levels. And that's why neurological levels doesn't work, because they always think that you make changes at the top and it cascades down. But that's not true. The logical level changes can go up or down. So every time I change a belief about myself, I change my self-concept a little bit. So it does affect the higher level. And what is higher, what is meta to your self-concept? How you feel about yourself, your self-esteem.
Oh.
So the more my beliefs align with my values, the higher my self-esteem. Now, anytime, and you can even try this right now, anytime your behavior aligns with one of your values, you immediately feel higher self-esteem. If you value kindness and you behave in a kind way, what happens? You feel good about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What if you don't believe you're a kind person, but you do something that's kind and you're able to acknowledge that? In that moment, you're going to feel kind. But the moment you step on to the next experience, that feeling goes away rapidly because you don't believe it about yourself. So that's between a state and a belief. You go into a state of feeling good about yourself because you just did something that was kind. But the moment you step away from that, the state breaks and you're back to feeling like you're an unkind person because that's what you believe you are. But we can transform that. We can transform that belief from being an unkind person to a kind person. And that will stabilize your self-esteem at that level. So it's not like your self-esteem is jumping all around based on what behaviors you're doing in the moment. Even when you do something stupid, you still go, oh, that was stupid. I know I'm intelligent, but I just did something stupid.
Right.
And that's the thing. When you feel certain about these beliefs about yourself, you're not afraid of feedback. In fact, you welcome it. And that's the sensitivity to feedback that we're talking about. Whatever makes your self-concept sensitive to feedback also makes it stronger. And what makes your self-concept stronger makes it more sensitive to feedback. We're not afraid to be that something doesn't work. We're not afraid to fail because that would be feedback on whether or not I'm successful. I need that information so that I can succeed. But most people don't do that. They go into, the whole self-worth thing, which is not real either. They feel bad about themselves because they failed, and then they don't try again.
Wow. So this is deep stuff. And wow. So as I'm listening to you, I'm also trying to run through experiences and understandings I have in my own life and, just life, but also reading the book, at least the parts that I have read and the videos that I've seen. So those experiences you have is if I do something kind, but I don't think of myself as a kind person, then I might feel kind for a moment, but then as soon as I go back to doing my normal stuff, I forget about it. It just
It goes away because you don't believe it about yourself. So that self-esteem that you experience falls by.
So it's just this anomaly thing that happened. It doesn't really count for anything.
It's just like people who have succeeded and they don't know how they did and they don't believe they're successful and they can't replicate the success because they don't believe that about themselves. So a good feeling, whatever, it just feels like a fluke and then it goes away.
So, and if I really feel strongly that I am a kind person, but that I do something that's not so kind, I go like, oh God, that was wrong. That was bad. I shouldn't have done that. I mean, make amends or whatever. I'll do something to make up for it. But I'm going back. I'm not going to really change my belief about that I'm a kind person.
Well, it won't change your belief. It will actually strengthen it if you're able to accept it and course correct.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Well, that's what the sensitivity to feedback is. So,
okay, got it. Okay.
Let's take an example of someone, and then I know I can pick on this because you're not an affirmations person either. This is why I don't like affirmations. If I stand in front of a mirror and I keep telling myself something that I don't truly believe, I kind of make myself feel a little good about that because I'm like pumping myself up, right? Well, what happens when I step outside my front door and somebody tells me something that's just the opposite? No, you're not. You're not what you believe you are. Then I just crumble because I have nothing to hold that in place.
Right.
That's just okay.
I was telling a client about this just about an hour ago. this very thing. And it can even be the opposite. I mean, if I'm trying to be happy and I'm not happy, or whatever, I can write those affirmations, and I just get pissed off that this is stupid. I just like it's dumb, right?
Even if you can get yourself to believe that, there's always a part of you that has to reconcile the fact that you don't believe it. And now you're in a conflict with yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
If you believe this, if there's like, it's like, okay, if I started calling you by a different name,
okay,
you're not going to start to doubt whether or not your name is Doug. You know your name is Doug. Okay.
Yeah.
So it might annoy you at a certain point, just be like, okay, why do you keep calling me the wrong name? But you're not going to start to doubt that you're Doug. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if I truly believe I'm successful and I have a database of experiences to back that up, not affirmations, but real experiences, and I fail, I might be upset, I might be disappointed, but I can accept that feedback and then just keep going because I believe I'm a success and I have this database of experience that supports that. I'm not doubting whether or not I'm a successful person. I'm just temporarily frustrated that I didn't get what I wanted. And then I just go, okay, but I know how to do this.
Got it. Yeah. Good. So getting back to our imaginary client, if I'm a coach and somebody comes in, how do I use this therapeutically? How do I use this in the moment with somebody? Is it something that can be done conversationally?
Yeah, but you have to kind of be doing it for a long time. And it's one of those situations where if you're like right moment, right time, person's receptive to it, all those, there's a lot of factors to make it work. So I won't really work with someone unless they get a package of sessions with me, because this is very holistic work. It's not like a one and done fast phobia cure, kind of thing.
So people that come to work with you, are they always like say, I want to work on my self-concept? Is this what?
No, they can come to me and want something. Okay. I get a lot of, because of what I charge, I get a lot of like wealthy entrepreneurs, even top CEOs, of companies. I'm right here next to Silicon Valley as well. And so they'll come to me. A lot of what comes to me is they're extraordinarily successful people. They can't figure out why they're so unhappy and unfulfilled, and they're experiencing imposter syndrome. I get a lot of that. And the reason for that is that they chased a lot of things. They didn't know the difference between their own values and the external values. So your parents tell you should be a doctor. And then, society says being a doctor is of high status and a lot of money. So you go after being a doctor, and every step of the way, you're hating yourself for it because you don't enjoy any part of it. But you think that the day will come when you or a doctor and you have the wealth and you have the family and all and the big house, and then suddenly fulfillment's going to cascade down on you, and that doesn't happen, you start looking for answers. And then oftentimes people find me on YouTube. So that's one kind of client that I'll get. And then there's other clients. I get a lot of coaches. They want to become better coaches, or they want to be more successful at it. So anytime somebody wants something, that's always going to be rooted in values that are driving it. So we elicit the values, and then I'll check back, make sure, is this goal actually aligned with these values? Half the time it's not. So I just saved this person years of frustration and possibly a lot of money chasing something that wasn't going to fulfill them anyway. So once we get a good goal going, we know that it's aligned with their values. I help them envision it. I want them to see a vision of what all their values look like coming together in this area of their life. And we, of course, we want to make sure that goal is aligned with that vision. And then I go through the values and I say, are you? So I shift from values to aspects of who you are. So if they say, oh yeah, achieving this will make me happy, they're passionate, joyful, and at peace, then I'm going to walk through all of those and say, are you at peace? Are you a joyful person? Are you a passionate person? And no one says yes, 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 all the way through with congruence. And sometimes they'll say yes, but you can see the incongruence in them. And that's what I look for. I look for the nonverbals to tell me at what level of certainty do they experience these values as qualities of who they are. And so what I know I need to do is then go through and help them transform each one of these values into certain and solid qualities of who you are. So if you think about it like this, you know, the old school model of NLP, present state, desired state. And the only thing that keeps me from being in my desired state is not the object that I'm trying to accomplish or the goal, the material object, whatever. It's resources, right? When I can identify those resources and then access them, then I'm in a resourceful state. Then it becomes much easier to get the thing that I'm trying to accomplish, right? I do the same exact thing, but I do it with belief.
Uh-oh. We just lost Damon. We are still recording, but Damon has just left out. So I'm going to pause this recording if I can. I think I can. This looks like a pause button, and we'll be right back.
NLP, you know, the old school NLP present state versus desired state, right?
Yep.
Present state is, you know, I don't have the resources that I want to have. That I think I'll get when I get to the desired state, the thing that I want. So it's not about the desired state is a state. It's not desired goal. It's not desired accomplishment. It's desired state. So what we know about that is if I can identify the resources that I would have in the desired state, that's what I need to access now to get some fulfillment, but more importantly, to be resourceful so that I can go out and accomplish this thing. Because it's going to be easier for me to accomplish when I'm resourceful. And what a lot of people are doing, they're withholding things like happiness from themselves and joy and passion until they accomplish the thing, which is a really bad idea. So what I do is I do the same exact thing that the old school NLP, present state, desired state, and it's present belief about myself versus desired belief about myself. So what are the missing beliefs about myself that I don't believe right now? That's what's really holding me back from getting the thing that I want. So when we transform those, so we're basically transforming the person's values into certain and solid qualities of who they are. When you believe those things about you, when you believe that you're passionate, you're at peace, you're happy, you're joyful, it's going to be a lot easier to go and accomplish those things that you want to accomplish.
Makes total sense. Makes total sense. And thank you. I know we were interrupted technologically there. Does that really pretty much complete the idea that you started before we were?
Yeah. So when I'm coaching clients, that's what I do. I'm not gonna be like a more of a consultant, try to help you solve a puzzle or achieve a goal. I mean, I'll do some of that because sometimes I have experience in whatever it is they're trying to achieve. Yeah. And if I can give them good advice on that, I'll do it.
I think that is one of the main components of coaching versus consultants. We are not consultants.
Right.
I mean, if I happen to know something about piano playing and a piano player comes to me or something like that, then I can consult. But mostly I'm a coach. I help them to get their own resources, find their own strategies to do that. I have lots of, like you said, very high achieving people as coaching clients. I don't know what you charge, or I charge more or less, but nevertheless, I still have a lot of those guys, and I don't know anything about developing low cost housing in Miami. I mean, I know nothing about that. but I'm a very successful coach with them because I can help them to get access to the resources in the states that they need to be in to do those things and to develop their own strategies and see where the glitch is and where it's really working smoothly. And I love the idea of having it be congruent with their values. Now, let me ask you a question. Before you mentioned about how you elicit the values for a particular quality, do you elicit like values as like the first thing you do for the person who says, I don't know what that actually brings me to another question before I finish asking that question. When I was talking before about getting down to the core state and core transformation. Mm-hmm. Is there a pinnacle state? Is there like a highest iteration of self that you seek to get to, like a definition of, who are you really?
No, that starts to get into more of the philosophical, and that is something I spent a lot of time with before I even got into NLP. And I also credit with helping me learn NLP rapidly. I spent a lot of time in non-duality, and with that, and that it's very practical. There's a lot of gurus out there, Indian gurus, who they were speaking through the language that they knew to speak in, which happened to be maybe some religious Hinduism type terminology. Yeah. That really throws people off. And I was lucky enough to have a teacher right here in Santa Cruz by the name of John Wheeler, not the physicist, who just really got it and he could explain it in easy to understand English terms. And I learned so much from him, but at the same time, and I would even come to him and I'd say, but this isn't putting food on my table, I need to solve these problems. So what if I can sort of dissolve the separation between myself and the rest of the world and all that? But I did spend a lot of time with that, and it did help me. And so by the time I got to NLP, and they were saying things like, these, what you think of as reality is really just structures in your mind, and beliefs aren't real. Like, this stuff was easy for me because I had already had the work for it. Yeah. So I don't believe that we can ever know this ultimate higher self. What I do know that we can do is we can find fulfillment, and we can continue to go deeper and deeper in our fulfillment. As long as we're alive, there is more fulfillment to find. And that's not like a treadmill kind of thing, like I'm chasing something. That is, okay, I will say too, for pretty much my whole adult life, I was not a happy person, okay? And I wasn't happy about that either. It just made it worse.
Weren't happy about being unhappy.
Exactly, because I wanted to be a happy person. And then I realized later that happiness is just one value. There's a lot more that goes into it. And then I realized that it was really about fulfillment. And what is fulfillment? Fulfillment is fulfillment of your values.
Yeah.
And you will have values that are higher on logical levels than other values. Not only that, if you go and you do a values elicitation in every context of your life, if you were to break your life down into 3 to 5 major life contexts, you can elicit your values from each one of those, and they're going to be different from context to context. However, you will likely find a few that keep popping up in every context. So what does that tell us? That they're very powerful. It's like submodalities where there's a common sensible. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It has every aspect of it in every modality. The same thing. So mine are joy, passion, and freedom. Those values show up in every context of my life. And so I started to realize that if I took the highest values that I had, and especially the ones that were overlapping all of the contexts of my life, and I focused on transforming those, because knowing the higher you value something, the higher your self-esteem will be when you believe you are that. Mm-hmm. Man, when I did that, I never felt a sense of purpose in my life, like true sense of purpose. I always felt like, at first I went in search of it and then I couldn't find it. And I was like, okay, I don't think this thing is even real. Suddenly, for the first time in my life, I felt a sense of purpose, and it was coming from within, and it was being generated from within. And I have not lost that connection. It has been steady ever since. Yeah. So yes, of course I have my down times. Yes, of course I get frustrated like everybody else again. So I'm not trying to say I'm some enlightened being here. I'm not. One thing that has happened since I did that is steady fulfillment, rock solid, steady, continuous fulfillment. And Steve was still alive whenever I tried that experiment. And it came from core transformation, because I invited Mark Andreas to come here to teach core transformation because I wanted to learn it. Just like you, I thought, hey, if I invite the teacher here and I make it a big deal, it's Santa Cruz, and that's where NLP started.
I know.
these teachers for cheaper, and I can learn from them instead of having to travel all over the place. It worked really well. So I invited Mark Andreas to come over and teach core transformation. And it was funny. Mark comes over and we hit it off right away. Have you ever met Mark?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's been on the podcast. Really a great guy. Amazing.
Yeah, great guy. So I got
to talk. If I may, the first time I met him and Steve at the same time. They came. I was in not Denver, but
Boulder,
Colorado, doing a hypnosis seminar for weight loss and smoking cessation.
Oh,
and
cool.
So they came to the seminar. It's like, hello.
Hey. Is Steve a little intimidating? He could be.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
My first encounter with Steve's, well, that was pretty good, but the right way to do it is.
Yeah, no, it was hard. It was hard.
The way Erickson would have done that is.
It was hard being mentored by him because it was never like Damon, you did great, and it was always like, well, this, and yeah. So that sounds exactly like Steve. Anyway, though, I brought Mark over and we got to talking, and I was like, so do you know the self-concept model? And he goes, no, I don't. And I'm like, what? Like, your father, this is the best model in the world. It's the most powerful NLP model. Not just the most powerful.
Interesting. He didn't know the self-concept model?
He did not know the self-concept model. And so he says, well, you're not a parent. Man, when you have kids, they don't listen to you. But he learned core transformation. He didn't learn his dad's technology. And so he said, well, why don't you tell me about it? And I was like, this is too weird.
Wow, that is, yeah.
I'm telling Steve's son about self-concept. This is weird. Okay. So I started telling him about it. And then I had him come back a year later to help me with my practitioner program. And he was like, hey, man, I learned the self-concept model. And I was like, oh, well, what made you finally decide to do that? He was like 36 when I met him or something like that. And he still hadn't loved it. And he goes, well, you wouldn't shut up about it. So I figured it was important. It's so funny. Yeah, that's kids, man. They don't listen to the parent, right? Somebody else tells them, hey, this is really important for you to learn. And then they go and learn it. That's my kids as well. But the main thing here was it was the first time, because I always knew that values elicitation was really important. Every time I would learn it in a practitioner training or something like that, I always felt like, isn't there, I just feel like there's more to this. Why don't we use this for more stuff? And when he came and taught core transformation, I was like, oh, wow, it's a values elicitation, and you take it to this extreme that is amazing. And you go into those core states. And when he left, that's when I started thinking, I bet I can use that with self-concept. Steve never taught it that way. And so I started doing what I just told you about, taking an area of your life or a goal, list the values, rank them so you know which ones are the highest, and then start transforming that way. And that's my life. I'm not kidding. My life went 180 degrees. Like, this is when YouTube started taking off. My business started taking off. I soon after met my wife, left my insurance business behind. Like, everything was just suddenly shifting in a direction, and I was happy. I was fulfilled. Never had these things before. I felt on purpose, and it has not slowed down since. In fact, it's only gotten better and better.
That's pretty awesome.
When I told Steve that I did that too, he was like, I'm not surprised that it worked. And so he was happy that that's what he ultimately wanted me to do, was to make self-concept my own and teach it. And I finally pulled that part off.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I've often in my coaching practice told people, like, the idea here in the good old USA about, the pursuit of happiness is one of the things. I think it's enshrined in our Constitution, or at least the Declaration of Independence, although I think it's the Constitution. At any rate, it's such a false thing to go towards happiness as a pursuit. You can be happy, but to pursue happiness and to say that's how I know I'm successful, is that when I'm happy. I think fulfillment is much greater need and a much greater and more fulfilling ultimate thing. And also the state of flow. People ask me if I'm happy when I play the piano and stuff. It's like, yeah, I guess so. But really what I'm in is in a state of flow. And I think flow is an amazing state. And if you're really doing good work, right, it can be work. You might not be just, going to Disneyland having fun, but, you're working, but you're working on something that's important. You're working on something that's meaningful and fulfills you. And you just sort of get into the state of flow, and time can go by, like all day you've spent at the desk, all day you've spent at the piano, all day you've spent at the computer, and just like you wrote 10 chapters or whatever, you're just in the flow of things. Yeah. I think that's an amazing state to.
You want to hear all how I think about flow and that whole thing?
I'm not sure. Is it good?
So what I tell people is, I'm still old school NLP in the sense that like resources are super important. I don't discount them because I focus more on beliefs and things like that. Resources are really important. Thank you for minimizing me. Okay. So what I would tell my students is, what is a state of resourcelessness?
Oh, resourcelessness.
Where, you have zero access to your resources.
Well, besides dead,
You're not dead, but you're close because
to be just like comatose, it would just be like,
panic.
And
this is how I know this. I experimented with it. I sat with myself and I said, I wonder what it would be like, because we do these experiments in self-concept, like cloaking our examples and how do we feel when we cloak our examples so we don't have access to them. I thought, I'm going to cloak all of my resources one by one until I have zero access to resources. It induced a state of panic in me. Of course, I pulled back before it went too far. And I was like, whoa, this is why they say don't panic in a crisis, because you have zero access to your resources. Which one comes first? I'm not sure. Like, does the resourcelessness come first and then panic is induced, or does panic happen and therefore you can't access your resources? I don't know. What is the polar opposite state where you have access, not access to all of your resources? I don't know if that's possible, but as you need a resource, it's immediately available to you.
What is that called?
Flow.
Oh, cool.
And the reason I think flow happens, and I'm not the first person to say this, that guy with that crazy long Hungarian last name.
His name is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
Yeah, something like that.
That's it. That's it, exactly right.
And so he talks about this, but it's like a state of dissolving that sense of self. It's a lack of self-consciousness, and we talk about this in the self-conscious training. Ultimately, you don't want to be self-conscious, because and I think that's what the sages, the non-duality sages, were all saying. It's not that you're not going to have a concept of yourself. You're going to. It's impossible not to have that. But it's a lack of consciousness about it. And so when we do the work, it's kind of a oxymoron. When we do the work, we have to be conscious of self to do the work. But ultimately, what we wanted to do is we wanted to go back into unconsciousness. I don't want to be thinking I am this, happy, joyful, as soon as you think it, it diminishes it. And so I think that's what flow is, where you have zero self-importance. You're just not, and that's why I think time goes by so quickly. And what happens, how do you kill flow? The moment you go, wow, I'm doing so good.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's right. It's true. As soon as you have that self-consciousness, instead of just focusing on the action, focusing on the behavior.
Yeah. So is that okay? Did that upset you?
No, that was good. I won't edit that one out. By the time this is done, it'll be like 12 minutes long. Just kidding.
I'm dropping old nuggets here, man. You could.
I'm not even going to edit out the part where you disappeared for 14 seconds. I'm not editing anything. But no, seriously, this is great. This is awesome stuff. This is amazing. This is much better than I thought. I would have had you on a long time ago if I'd known that I didn't have to finish the book first. Seriously. But yeah, no, this is great. It is so fascinating to me because it is so parallel with a lot of the work that I do, but I haven't really done this work per se. But years ago, when I was working with Tony Robbins, because I was trained by Tony. People sometimes don't even know this, but he was an NLP trainer. He was trained by Bandler and Grinder, but paid homage mostly to Grinder, but also always brought Richard to his certification courses.
Did you see that recent interview that he did with him at his? It's on YouTube. Yeah, with Richard, and then he brings him onto the training, and
yeah. Amazing how nothing has changed. But Tony did this thing that he called Date with Destiny. It was all about eliciting values, and also what you've got to do to get to fulfill those values, and then reordering them to be more congruent with who you are in life, who you want to be, at least in life. And then to integrate those values he had people, state them in such a powerful way that they were congruent with it, which is a great concept. But when there's 2,000 people in these teams of 20 or whatever, maybe I'm exaggerating slightly, 1,000 people, teams of 20, but nevertheless, being that it was a Tony Robbins seminar and people are pretty anchored to being peak state sort of things, people would shout loudly, "I am passion, I am happy, I am empathetic," whatever it was, they'd be like, "Yes." And if they did it loud enough and congruent, strongly enough, then the team would go like, "Yes, you're congruent." And me, I was going like, "No, that wasn't congruent." So my team was always like there for like 8 hours. It's like, "No, that's not congruent. I'm not getting." And that wasn't, of course, the party line. So it's one of the reasons I left Robbins Research. But
you can't force that. You can't,
No, but I loved what you're saying, that you have the person talk. Are you a happy person? Are you a content person? Are you this person? And then you watch their actual physiological congruence. Like, yes, I am. No, I'm not. Obviously, it's not just that easy, but it's part of it.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm happy.
Yeah.
And so what do you do when that happens, when you find a spot in incongruency in when they say that this is who I am or whatever, but it's not coming out that way?
At that point, I'm just information gathering. Like I'm not going to try to negate it on them right there. It could depend. I won't say I'll never do that. It's more like I'm watching for what I'm looking for, and I'm making notes.
Okay.
And so they might say, I'm going down the list, and I'll say, "Okay, Doug, or are you a fun person?" Because sometimes that's it. And they'll go, and what are they doing? They're accessing information all around, and especially the ambiguous qualities. It's usually the information. You usually have one side that says you're not, one side that says you are, and that's why they're going back and forth like that. And then I'll say, "Yeah," and then I put ambiguous, and then I just move on. They don't even know what I'm writing, and so, but I know what we need to work on. And if I give them too much information, this too. If you give them too much information, they can start negating it, and I don't want to, have to negotiate with them.
Hey, I think we were in flow here because I just looked at the time. We've been on this for more than an hour at this point. I don't want to take any more of your time, but can we do this again sometime?
Absolutely, man. We always get along. We've always gotten along so well from the very first time that I had you come to Santa Cruz.
And how did your kids were kids when I saw them last? They were like carrying them to the stroller kind of kids.
Almost, yeah. They were a little bit older than that. And I have this picture. I need to find it, but it's I took a picture of you with the kids, and my daughter was just like like that. And I think I know why you don't have kids, like most, because you're still a big kid. You don't want competition, right?
Absolutely not. No.
Yeah. When you came, Mike, you were so playful with my kids that later they kept asking about you. I think they wanted to hang out some more. But yeah, they were pretty small, and now my daughter is about to turn 18. My son will be 18 in a year. The time passes, but I always resonated with your stuff. I always thought that because there's a lot of NLP people I disagree with, and most of the time that's just because they're rather sloppy, and they haven't really learned the stuff very deeply. Mm-hmm. Every time I either read one of your books, went to one of your trainings, or just had these discussions with you, I always felt like we were in good alignment. We probably don't agree on absolutely everything. We don't need to. But I always knew that, you look into the stuff very deeply. So of course you're very true to both NLP and hypnosis. And I feel like I've done the same thing. I just really studied it because I wanted to really understand it. And so I feel that kind of resonance with you every time we discuss these things.
Thanks. I really do appreciate you saying that. Coming from you, that's a huge compliment. So yeah, thank you, Damon Cart, for being here. And if people want to get hold of you, what's your most convenient website?
Selfconcept.com for the website. On YouTube, I've got so much content out there. It's ridiculous at this point. I am on Instagram and TikTok, but I don't do a lot of that stuff. It's mainly my YouTube channel. So yeah.
Very nice. Well, thank you once more time for being here, and hope to see you again real soon.
Thank you for having me.
This has been the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure seeing you again. Hope to see you again real soon. Come back next week when we have another gripping and exciting episode of the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. And if you want to, you can find out more about us, each and every one of us, at essentialcoachingskills.com. Thanks.